I gotta help change the narrative. I have to help people understand that autism is a developmental disability. It's not a death sentence. It doesn't mean your child will never flourish. It doesn't mean that they won't be happy. It doesn't mean that you won't be happy. It means that you need to get off your butt and find ways to support your child in their creative way of processing things and learning things.
Hello everyone, welcome to 5 to 10 in the D. I'm sitting here with Camille Proctor, the director and founder of the Color of Autism Foundation, a nonprofit that is committed to educating and assisting underserved families with autistic children. Camille, thank you so much for being on 5 to 10 in the D.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. So this is such an important topic, and I just wanted to read some stats or some facts that the CDC has determined. 1 in 58 children is diagnosed with ASD. Boys are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism than girls. Early intervention is important in that it can improve learning, communication, social skills, as well as underlying brain development. And what's really important there and to understand, is for our audience to understand, is that considering that early intervention, what's alarming is the fact that minority groups tend to be diagnosed later and less often. So I want to kind of go back to your story, starting from the very beginning, going back to maybe 2017. You had a career marketing, and then your son was diagnosed with autism. Kind of walk us through that journey those first couple of years.
Sure. So on April 1st, 2006, which seems to be appropriate, it was April Fool's Day, I had my son Ari. And I watched Ari develop. And when he was right around 1, I realized that, he wasn't walking. He was kind of scooting around and holding on to stuff, but he wasn't walking. Okay. Then he had this weird fascination with ceiling fans. He'd spend his time just flapping his arms and looking at the ceiling fans. That was odd too to me. Yeah. And he had some words, but then he started to regress where he really wasn't talking. He was just sort of grunting. Okay. But the thing that struck me the most is that he wasn't pointing.
Okay.
And he liked to turn the lights on and off. So eventually he did walk right around 14 months, and but the behaviors, what I found to be odd, didn't really change. So I started off on this journey like a lot of parents. You go to your pediatrician and you say, hey, I think something's wrong. And then they say yes or no. But in my case, my doctor said he was fine because Ari made a lot of eye contact. He was a really cute little kid, so everyone loved the fact that he was always smiling and always, happy and jovial. So I went from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor, and it's like I got nothing. So we made a move from Detroit to Atlanta, and we get there, and I'm still on this journey because I know somebody tell me something.
Right.
So finally, I went to a genetic doctor, and I got him tested genetically, and I found out that he had 47 chromosomes instead of 46. I think that's how it works. Okay. And that's just 1 over. Now, in most people, it's unremarkable. And this is what this geneticist said to me. And it's her opinion. And she clarified it for me. She said, it's my opinion, but most of the kids that I see with this 1 chromosome over usually have autism. She said, but I'm not going to tell you that because I'm not a developmental pediatrician.
Can I ask you a question? So that was, what, 12 years ago, right?
Yeah, about 12 years.
So was there a lot less known then than there is probably today, I would imagine?
I would say absolutely, yeah. But the thing is that when you're dealing with parents and you're telling parents information that they may not want to hear, it's kind of an emotional thing.
Sure.
So as a physician, it's hard for you.
Sure.
But then some...
And they're not right, they're not certain that so they're giving you a diagnosis, but you don't really know.
They're not certain.
So that makes it more frustrating probably.
Right. So she got on the phone and she called a colleague of hers, a doctor by the name of Leslie Rubin. And Dr. Rubin saw Ari the very next day and was like, he has PDD-NOS. I always forget what that acronym stands for, but I always say it's like putting lipstick on a pig. He has autism. All right, so thank you. Finally, I got a diagnosis. I can stop trying to force this. So now what do I do? Because I got what I wanted. I got somebody to tell me what was wrong with him. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, I got my son's daycare calling me every day at 10 o'clock. Come get him. So I would have to leave work, and I don't know if you're unfamiliar with Atlanta traffic, it's absolutely the worst. So I would have to leave my office from Midtown Atlanta and drive to my house, near my house, to pick him up. Which it happened often, and then I said, well, I'm gonna work from home, and I got cleared to work from home. No biggie. So what my son would do was he was like my customer service / personal assistant. He would unplug my computer, unplug the fax machine, press the machines on and off. It was just a hot mess.
Yeah. And
I spent most of my days actually doing nothing, just balled up in a ball, whimpering, because I don't know why must you do this? And it would always be when I'm just about to hit save or auto save that on Word or whatever PowerPoint, and he would just press that button. It was all gone. He'd wipe it all out. That was his thing. I'm gonna wipe all of this stuff out. So then I realized that I couldn't even work from home. I took him to another daycare, and I explained to the woman he had autism and that he responds differently and he processes things differently. And we went through this whole thing, and she takes me on a tour of this lovely daycare, and we walk through the building and we see all these things, and then he gets to this teacher, the lady who was going to be his teacher. Now he's on the ground and he has a truck, and he's like doing this because he was obsessed with wheels, and he's doing this. And I remember the lady talking to him, and he didn't respond, and she said something again, and he didn't respond, and she goes, oh, we don't do that here.
And how old is he at this point?
About 2.5.
Okay.
And she's like, we don't do that here. And I go, I picked him up, and I remember I just started to cry because I was so frustrated because I didn't have anybody to watch him. But I don't remember what I said to those people, but I'm sure it wasn't nice. Yeah, but I remember just sitting in my car crying. And and so it was that day that I decided, well, you can't work, you got to sit home. So I looked at my years of working. I said, how much money do I have in the bank? I had X amount of money in the bank. I had X amount in my 401k, and I had X amount of money in my pension fund. And I had a mortgage, and I had a car, and we had to figure it out. So for a long time, so I walked away and basically lived off those two things, my pension and my savings. And it was hard because you're trying to find opportunities, but back then, I think when you're new into something that you call, like, it's the unknown, you're new to it, you don't really know what to do. And if you don't have the right peers to kind of guide you along and be there for you, because it's hard. People would say to me, oh, he's autistic, I'm so sorry. Why are you sorry? What's there to be sorry about? I just need a break. I need a nap. Want to come over here?
Right.
Especially like in the African American community, because it's difficult when you start talking about things like developmental disabilities or psychiatric things. People would say to me, oh, they just say that about people. There's nothing wrong with him, but he just needs a spanking. And I'm like, it can't be whipped out of him. He needs a spanking, he needs this. It was hard for me.
Sure.
Because it was just hard because people didn't understand.
People didn't understand, and they're making presumptions about things that
like you're a bad parent.
Right.
Well, the epiphany was I went to a support group, and I had all these questions. And I said, so what's going to happen when he's like 13, 14, which he's right about that age now, and if he still can't speak or articulate himself, what's going to happen if he gets stopped by the police?
Oh.
And they're like, nothing. They'll know he's autistic. And I'm like,
will they?
That's not his reality. I said, because his reality is that most African American children are viewed as menacing people. And this was right around the time where we had this whole Trayvon Martin and the hoodie, the unfortunate situation. And it's like, no, he'll get shot because he doesn't know what yield means. He doesn't understand what yield means.
So there's real cultural factors that, happening that you're like, you're fearful of for your son. Because you've already seen people that don't understand, the disorder. And,
So people don't understand. I gotta help change the narrative. I have to help people understand that autism is a developmental disability. It's not a death sentence. It doesn't mean your child will never flourish. It doesn't mean that they won't be happy. It doesn't mean that you won't be happy. It means that you need to get off your butt and find ways to support your child in their creative way of processing things and learning things. So African American children are typically diagnosed way later than their white counterparts. Yeah. Now for me, I pushed it. I had a whole agenda. Give me what's wrong. Give me something, right?
Right.
But then you have people who don't do anything because they've been told they'll just grow out of it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that dynamic goes through almost all of underserved communities, whether it's African American, Latinx, it's all basically the same narrative, right? So I realized that that's a huge, huge problem because you have people who wait till their children get to school and then the school's having problems with them and then the school's giving out these diagnoses, which is horrible because now your kid's so far behind on the things that they should be learning and doing. When you talk in terms of disparities and the things that people know, there's a bunch of misinformation out there, period. But then in the African American community, there's even more misinformation. And so
probably a lack there of information.
It's a lack of, but it's the way information is often disseminated. Because my perfect example is if you're driving into the city and you see a billboard and it has a baby on it and the baby's white and it's like, we're here to help you. That's a pretty tone deaf ad. That's not addressing that community. Right?
Yep.
Because if I didn't know autism, I'd just look at the billboard and say, oh, another white kid has a disability. All right. And just keep driving. Every African American production, I like to say, movies that are actually done and produced by African Americans, there's always lots to learn. For instance, there's this movie called Soul Food, and it starred Vanessa Williams in it. Now, this movie was significant in me explaining what autism is to so many people. And so I go, remember Soul Food? They said, yeah. I said, remember that uncle? The uncle. Who was the? Oh yeah, the one with the TV and the rabbit ears, the antenna rabbit ears. He was like, yeah. I said, he lived with Big Mama, didn't he? He sure did. Why was he there? Why was he there? And they're like, oh. And I go, and why do all of us have like an uncle that lived with grandma, and then when grandma died, he went to your aunt or either came to live with you? Yeah, that was the autistic person. But it didn't have a name. And so with the Color of Autism Foundation, I founded it primarily to bring forth awareness about autism and autism related disabilities. But then I realized, okay, they know what it is, so how do they access the services? How do they get the services in their own communities?
By the way, I want to commend you for, you saw a need. And you took charge, and you were saying earlier that you've learned a lot about yourself and empathy and all of that. But I think that was a gift that was given to you, and a blessing in disguise that forced you to go out and make a difference. So,
for me.
Congratulations to you for that.
Well, thank you. And for me,
I'm sure you're affecting a lot of people's lives by what you started.
I hope so, because for me, autism was a blessing. Now, a lot of people will say it was the worst thing that ever happened to them. It wasn't for me because it made me realize that there's a lot of people out there that need the support. You have families that need support, and you have individuals who are autistic that need support and also to be acknowledged for the people that they are. And oftentimes as a parent, you don't really think about that. You just think about how you want your child, but you don't think about how your child wants to be.
Sure.
With the Color of Autism Foundation, what we found is that an informed parent is a better parent.
Okay.
So now our goal is to go out and we're creating programs that support the families, because it's one thing to say, okay, now your child has autism. What does that mean? Well, we train people on essential. We have a program. Let me back up. We have a program called Spectrum of Care.
Okay.
So Spectrum of Care, it's many facets to it, but one facet to it is training. So we do a 6 weeks training where we talk about early intervention, we talk about techniques that parents can use at home, we talk about IEP programs, we talk about supports as they get older, how you build self-efficacy into the child.
How can people find you, and what resources will they find on the Color of Autism?
So we have a website, which is thecolorofautism.org, and we have a Facebook page. And the resources that we offer, we have a resource page, but for us primarily, what we're doing with our Spectrum of Care is that we're training parents to be peer navigators, because we want parents to go out there and replicate what they've learned with us, with other parents. Because what you don't have when you call an 800 number is you literally don't have someone that gives you accountability, right?
Yeah.
So you can call a number that says they're going to help you, and they do. They give you a list of numbers and places to call, and then you sit there and you're like, you call up the number and the person says there's a wait list. Do you, and so I give them these scenarios. Do you A, give your name and get on the wait list, or B, hang up the phone? Almost always they're like, hang up the phone and call another place. Nope. Yeah. You give them your name, you get on the wait list. We tell them, get a folder. You're gonna write all this stuff down. Who did you talk to? Who said, good morning, this is Maria, and this is Dr. Blah Blah's office. Write Maria's name down, at least, so you can at least let them know this is who you spoke with. This is what you do. This is how you do it. This is how you execute it. So now, these accountability partners are literally calling up these parents. Hey, did you call that number?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you call Detroit Wayne Integrated Mental Health? I think that's what it's called now.
That's great.
Did you call this place? Yeah. Did you call the Children's Center?
They're true mentors. They're mentors. It's a mentorship program. It's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's never been that. There's always been the person who kind of gives you like these numbers and you're writing them down, and sometimes you misplace the digits or whatever.
Yeah.
And now there's someone to have your back, genuinely have your back, and walk you through the process.
That's awesome. So you're doing a wonderful thing here, generating awareness of this. If people want to help and they want to somehow participate in the Color of Autism, what are your needs? Like, how can people help?
Well, one of the biggest things that face many parents with autism is something that I touched on earlier in this interview, is that they don't have quality daycare, and they don't really have options. Yeah. So there's a need to train professionals on how to be inclusive for the care of children with autism. And so we do that training, but we can't do that training without donations, because most of the time you have these independent daycares or people who do in-home daycare, and they really can't afford to pay us. And then also there's a need for there to be like a day camp or something, some sort of activity for children on the spectrum in the city of Detroit proper, because there's lots of stuff in the suburbs and they're great programs, but there isn't anything in the city. So when we just recently did a survey, and it's funny, we sent out a newsletter and we did a survey, and it was like, well, how much can you pay if there were a camp that your child could go to, how much would you pay? Right. So we put prices up there, but what I didn't do is I didn't close off the survey, and so people started writing stuff, zero, I can't afford. And so a lot of parents can't afford just regular care. And it's important to know that a lot of families who have autistic kids are underemployed or unemployed. And then we have so much going on. We want to launch a workforce training program. We work with a coder. Her name is Jeanette Washington. She's a speech and language pathologist turned coder.
Okay.
So she's a software engineer now. Okay. And so she works a lot with dyslexics. She even wrote a book about dyslexia. Okay. And so we're working with her to create a program on teaching, and I hate using the word higher functioning, because I don't, for me it's an iffy term, but I'm using it in this case only because of certain capabilities. Sure. Those individuals who have the ability to code, we want to give them that opportunity rather than put them bagging groceries. If you can do more, do more.
Right.
Right? And so when you take a kid from an underserved community that's brilliant and you say, well, you are autistic, so you can only do this, that's just, you're offering him nothing.
Yeah.
But if you take a kid who's on the spectrum and say, I'm going to train you to code, then you're going to be putting, first of all, you're going to build his self-esteem, build his efficacy, and you're going to help his family.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's going to be able to help his family.
Yeah.
And he'll be able to help himself.
Yeah.
And he'll also be able to build a legacy for heaven forbid when that day when his parents are no longer there to support him.
Right.
At least he'll be able to have a skill that can assist him with the rest of his life.
Sure. Yeah. So we'll make sure that we post links to the Color of Autism site. And my kind of last question I want to ask you is like, what's the one takeaway you want people to understand?
Wow, it's one takeaway.
You can give more than one.
One take. Well, in my particular case, again. For me, autism has enhanced my life. I mean, it's changed me in so many ways, and I think for me, it's changed me for the better.
Yeah.
And that's really my takeaway. I've been blessed by meeting some really great people while I've been on my journey.
Yeah.
I've met some really great autistics who kind of set me on the right path, going, "No, that's not don't."
Yeah.
Because they will tell you. They will tell you. And you have to take all of that bluntness and that criticism, and you have to realize that you probably don't know what you're talking about because they're living it.
Yeah.
So I've learned quite a bit, and I guess my biggest takeaway is that I finally learned how to be happy.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for being on 5 to 10 today. Best of luck to you, and I hope we can help spread awareness with this video and this interview. And thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.